Hi everybody, today we are planting some Bareroot trees. So I thought I would show you how I do it. I am planting both fruit trees, specifically apple, and ornamental trees, birch trees today. And I got them Bareroot from Fedco, which is in Maine, and I will have them linked below. I have planted Bareroot trees before and they are doing pretty well. I have some apple and peach trees, and then I just planted out some Bareroot apricots this spring, late March, early April, and I have a video of that, so I'll link that here. So the first thing you're gonna wanna think about is timing. When do you plant the trees? So it's really important with Bareroot trees to try to plant them when they're dormant, even more so than with potted trees. If you're in zone 7 or warmer, maybe even zone 6, you can do a fall planting of your trees, of your Bareroot trees, and they should be able to root in over the winter and then leaf out in the spring, and that would be great for them. Here I'm in zone 5, so really zone 5 and above we can't do, it's not as safe to do a fall planting, so I do an early spring planting. And really it's best to get them in the ground as soon as it has thawed out and is not too saturated. We get a lot of snow, and so when it first thaws here, we get a lot of moisture in the ground. So we really want it to dry out a little bit. But honestly, we are in the first week of May here, and I like to plant them out even earlier than this. Most of the trees I have here on my property are already leafing out, and I'd prefer to get them in the ground before that's happening. I think specifically where we are, I would prefer like mid-April would be ideal. The apricots went in very early April, and they're doing great actually. I was worried that the ground was a little too moist, but they're doing fantastic. You can see the trees are here in a bucket. It is very important to keep the roots moist. So they usually come wrapped in some sort of like moist paper or substance, or sawdust I've seen as well, that's been moistened, and you want to make sure they stay moist throughout the time you have them until they get in the ground. It's also good practice to soak them for at least a couple hours before planting. So I've soaked these ones overnight, and I'm trying to keep them in the bucket of water now. We had to dump out some of the water to move it over here, but we're trying to keep them moist until planting time. You can add a little tiny bit of like a fish emulsion or a seaweed fertilizer to it just to make them extra happy, but it's not necessary. I added like a teeny tiny amount to this only because I had some left over in my watering can from watering something else, so it had a tiny bit in there. You do not want to soak them for too long. So Holistic Orchard book by Michael Phillips says no longer than 24 hours. I believe the risk is root rot, which is obviously bad. So these have been in for maybe about 12 hours now, and we're gonna get them in the ground this morning. Okay, the next thing you want to think about is where you're planting it. So you want to think about what the mature size of your tree is going to be. So I got standard size apple trees. They get to 20 to 25 feet tall and wide, and they need full sun. So when I'm placing them, I want to make sure there's nothing blocking them from getting sun, and that they're not blocking each other as I'm putting them around each other. My birch trees are getting 40 to 60 feet tall, and they are going to go south of the apple trees, but they're going to be in a way far enough away that they shouldn't block them completely. It's going to be at least 40 feet. And the birch trees get more of like a dappled filtered light. So I do have there are some other trees that can go underneath them that like that part shade. So I'm keeping all that in mind though as I choose my planting sites. Why I'm out here by the swing set is the apple trees are actually going out kind of back and around the play area here. Hopefully the kids will enjoy having the trees here and maybe having some shade eventually, and also some apples to eat. So obviously you're going to need to dig a hole. So for a Bareroot tree, it's really good, actually for everything in general, it's really good to dig a bigger hole than you need for the roots. And then the soil is loosened around it. Now, a couple thoughts on this. I have heard people saying you have to plant it in a square hole, and I'm just not buying that. I think what's more important is, so for example, we have clay soil, and what you're trying to avoid is compacted soil around the edge of the hole, whether it is a circle, an ellipse, a square, a rectangle, whatever it is. If it's super compacted and like smooth, it might be hard for the roots to go through. Now, if you have like loamy, sandy soil, this is not going to be a problem no matter what shape it is. And if you have hard compacted soil, you're just going to get a square root bound plant, I believe, instead of a circle root bound plant. It just doesn't make sense to me that that corner would help it out. But what I do like to do, because we do have the clay soil, is I do like to go in there and just loosen the soil around it and kind of poke at it with the shovel and such, so that it's not a smooth edge, that it's rough when we put it in the planting hole. So that's what I try to do to try to help make sure that the roots can go out into the surrounding soil and not get root bound. So you can prune the roots. I tend not to unless there's like an obvious breakage or anything. So I'm just gonna leave them. The one thing that I do always like to add is Mycorrhizae fungi. It's a really, really cool thing. There's been a lot of research done on this. It's a fungi that creates a network connecting the tree to other fungi matters and other trees, and it just helps with root developments and helps the roots in the tree get all the nutrients it needs. So I'm using this Myco Apply all-purpose that I got from Fedco as well, and Organic Grower Supply, which is it's part of Fedco, and I just sprinkle it on the roots and in the hole as I'm planting. It's not necessary to add other nutrients such as compost and fertilizer. You really want the tree's roots to go seek out the water and nutrients in the soil around it and get a strong root system, and so sometimes adding those extra amendments can actually make it just a little too cozy in its spot and not reach out as far as they want. Recently we have ended up adding some garden soil, and that is only because sometimes it seems like we don't have enough of our native soil to put back in after we dug the hole, because we have such grass and with extensive root systems that it just, we don't want to put all the grass back in. It causes problems. I found that even if I put it upside down, like some people say too, it just grows right back up, and I don't actually want it right around the base of my tree. So that's number one. Number two, because we have the clay soil, I do worry a bit about drainage. So the garden soil I have has sand and other well-draining things in it. So it does help a bit with the drainage, especially right around where I'm planting the tree. I really don't want it to get root rot and have those roots there rot away, because that's gonna kill the tree. When you are planting it, make sure you spread the roots out and make sure the soil is all in between and around them. If you just dump the soil on top, you may miss pockets in between roots, and you don't want that. You don't want air pockets around the roots in there. So just pay attention when you're doing it. Make sure the soil is getting all around and through and under and all the places around the roots. Make sure you're burying to about where the roots start. It's called the root flare. You should be able to tell there. The other thing you're going to want to pay attention to is the graft. So most fruit trees today are grafted, and that means that there is this top part that's the fruit that you want, and that's the scion, and then there's the root stock, which is the roots, and that controls for size. So if you get a dwarf tree, you want to make sure you're only getting roots from that stock. In most cases, you want to make sure you're only getting roots from the rootstock, not the scion. So here you can kind of tell, it was really well done, so it's not super obvious, but this is where the graft was, where they grafted a different tree onto this rootstock. You want to make sure that this is at least a couple inches above the soil level. So that's a good way to do it. Your root flare should be far enough down, but just also watch out for that. You don't want to bury that. Oh, then you have to water the tree in. In addition to giving it water, which it needs, this also helps settle the soil around. So if I see any roots after I water it, we'll have to put a little bit more soil on top. If you have sandy soil or loamy soil, you could also step on around it to make sure it's firmed in. I don't want to compact my clay soil, so I'm not going to do that. Trees, especially in the first year, you need to make sure they're getting enough water. So you're going to want to come back in, look like 2-3 days if you haven't gotten a sufficient amount of rain, and give it more water. I think it needs like 5 gallons a week. I'm going to double check and put it on the screen. They need a lot of water. So if you're in a rainy place, I try to track how much rain we're getting. I have a rain gauge out so that I know if I need to water my trees. And in the first year especially, you want to make sure you're out making sure they have regular water and a lot of it. Also, I will be mulching around the base of all my trees once I get a mulch order in. I haven't done that this year because I've been busy with other things. But when you do mulch it up, you want to make sure you're not putting wood mulch right against the base of the tree. what I'm again referencing the Holistic Orchard book by Michael Phillips. I'm going to link it, I'll have it linked below. He recommends actually putting like a pea gravel or stone around, just directly around the base, and then having wood mulch farther out to the drip line. So you'd extend it every year as the tree grows. So I just wanted to note that. Don't mulch it so it doesn't have weed competition from grass and other things, but don't put the wood mulch right against the base of the tree. So this is the golden russet apple. It is a great fall apple for fresh eating, and my eldest really likes it. So I thought I'd plant it near the playset, and then when they're ripe, she can just pluck them from the tree. We got 2 more apples and birches to do though, so let's get going. Apple tree number 2 done. This is a Calville Blanc de Vere. I am sure I'm not saying that correctly. I will have it on the screen. It is actually a dessert apple we've tried before. We have all of these are apple varieties that I've tried before that local orchards around here grow. So I feel like they'll have a better chance of doing well here. So this one's like it's kind of hard. It's not the best for fresh eating. It's really a really good dessert apple. Like if you did like really thin slices, that'd be really good. And it's good in like pies and stuff. So that's why I planted that one. So this tree here is a black Oxford tree. It gets these like really deep, dark red skinned apples, almost black. It's not actually black, but again, these are a fall winter apple, like late fall, early winter, and these ones store really well. So once we're getting a good number of apples from this tree, I will be storing them. They are actually supposedly better after a month or 2, I think. And they're all fall bearing apples, and so they should all actually pollinate each other, because with apples and a lot of fruit trees you do need different varieties that bloom them around the same time to pollinate. So the other 3 I have are summer apples, so they should bloom earlier than this set here. So I wanted to make sure I had enough that I had pollination. So those are the apple trees. My husband had to go back in to work, but I was really grateful to have his help for those ones, but it's gonna be just me on the birch trees. So. All right, it's actually been a couple hours. We took a break for lunch and other things. So I'm back out here. I've got some of my kids playing nearby, and I'm going to get these birch trees planted because again, with Bareroot trees, you really wanna get them in relatively soon. They've been soaking since last night and I don't want them in for 24 hours or more. I am putting them in this area behind my berry and rose garden. So we're standing like right behind the back arbor of my rose circle. So if you want to know what I'm talking about, I'll link some videos here for you to check them out. But behind me, you can see a service berry here I recently planted, and there's another one here. And so there's kind of like an opening back here. And the birches trees are going to go where there's those stakes. I'm hoping eventually this area back here will be evergreens and other flowering and fruiting trees and shrubs, and probably perennials, mainly for, you know, ornamental and wildlife. I want to put a bunch of stuff back here for, you know, shelter and nesting and food for birds in particular, but we'll probably, and pollinators, we'll have lots of other, we have other wildlife around us. So I'm thinking for them, I may sneak in some other edible things. I don't know. I'm not going to be able to do this whole thing this year, but we're starting with the birch trees here. And I don't know if you can see all the stakes. I have 3 birch trees. It's hard for me to tell you. I think you can see 2 of the stakes, but they're going to go back here. They're going to kind of go in the center towards the back. I tried to put them back in like a trio, but I didn't measure. I kind of want it to be irregular. Yeah, so that's what it's like, slightly irregular. And then I think it'll look more natural as other things are planted up around them as well. But today, birch trees planted. And I'm going to do the exact same steps as I did with the apple tree of digging the hole, mycorrhizae fungi, making sure I've got soil around all the roots. These ones shouldn't be grafted, I don't think. I'll have to double check. But paper birch grow really easily from seedlings. So I'm assuming they're not grafted.
Running from all things at once without thinking twice. And I knew it would catch up and that we would be the ones left behind. The stories I've been told, they never seem to leave my mind. And this road that I am on, I gotta stay here for some time. Time is gone and I grew up. I somehow made it through without losing sight. And I still wonder where you are, and if you found a way out from the dark. The stories I've been told, they never seem to leave my mind. And this road that I am on, I gotta stay here for some time. Bruises, they come and they go, and we have to try and keep up, 'cause this life's so much more. And I still wonder where you are.
We are done planting the Bareroot trees. Yes, I'm so glad they're in. Let me show you, it's a little hard to see some of them, but let me show you what we did here. So here are the 3 birch trees. I think if nothing else, you should be able to see the tags, hopefully. They're kind of blending into the grass right now. I am going to come, probably tomorrow morning, I'll come out and mow this area. Hopefully it's supposed to dry out a little bit, so we'll give it a little longer. It's pretty wet out there. I did water them in, and I didn't add any extra soil with these. Birch trees do like a lot of moisture, so I'm hoping they'll be happy back here. I do, again, have that heavy clay soil. So anyway, I'm really excited to see how these look. These do get pretty tall, and I don't know how many years it's going to take to get that peeling bark, but I can just imagine in the winter, really all year round, but how striking that's going to look. So I'm going to kind of slowly move this way so we can see where we're going for the apples. There's a little blue spruce right there that I think I'm going to try to plant next off camera. So you see the place set over there? I actually just moved that bench before I planted the birch trees so that I had somewhere to sit out by the playset. I'm kind of excited about it. Let's go see the apple trees a little closer and kind of see where they're placed here. This first one is actually the last one we planted. It is the Black Oxford, and I think it's the only one that really has green buds right now. Let's go check out the other ones. I didn't see any buds on them last time I looked, but we'll just check again and get a closer look. This one here is the Calville Blanc. The buds on this one aren't green yet, but it just looks healthy. It's just a little bit behind the rest of my trees right now. It's coming from a colder zone, and my guess is that they probably had it in a spot to keep it dormant until they could ship it. So, because again, it is best to plant these dormant. So yeah, these ones are a good deal bigger with more established branches than when I planted my last apple trees. So I'm really excited to see what they do. All right, last one over here. I thought this would be really nice with the kids' like log area there to have it kind of almost just barely overhanging it eventually. Again, that might change. It's going to take quite a few years to get there, and the kids will get bigger, but playing in the middle of an orchard I think is fun. So again, I'm not seeing green buds, but it still looks healthy and alive. So yeah, they were only in transit for I think 2 days, maybe 3, and then I got them yesterday and got them in the ground today. So there we go. That was a lot of work, but it's going to be so worth it. I love trees and everything they give to us, so I'm very excited to see how those develop. I do plant both potted and bare root trees, but I do love to get bare root trees. I get them a little bit smaller and a little bit cheaper, to be honest, than the potted plants. And I do think that it gives the plant a really good start to just go right into the soil like that. They don't have they're not in their cozy little potted home. So it really stimulates the roots to grow. And I find that I can find a lot of great varieties. You just often have to order them and often have to be early enough. So I actually ordered them in January. Some of these places can sell out rather quickly. So you kind of got to get on it, and then they ship it out when it's time in your zone. So again, these are from Fedco Trees. I will have them linked below. I have bought several trees from them over several years, and they've all done, for the most part, really well. I will say the only time I haven't had success was with a couple cherry trees. I talked about that in a recent video when I was planting the service berries. And I think that was my issue because they did really well for a year or two. And I think they just got too much water where they were. So, although I'm not 100% sure. So I'm keeping an eye on, I did some things differently in planting the service berries in that spot, and I'm keeping an eye on them. I do hope that was helpful. Comment below with any questions. If you want to see updates on these trees and the other things I'm doing in my garden and orchard, go ahead and subscribe, and also like this video if you've gotten that far. It lets YouTube know that you liked it and spreads the video around. All right, friends, until next time, happy gardening.